The pictures on my bedroom wall were yellowed with age. The oldest one was of Howard and me on our wedding day, 1968. I'm in a simple white dress, no veil or lace, and he's in a suit with a narrow tie. We smile at each other, not at the camera. I think that's when I was really happy. My name is Beatrice Whitmore. I am 78 years old, and it is only now that I am finally living in my dream home. Just 2 years ago, I buried Howard after 52 years of marriage, pulled my savings out of the bank, and bought this house on Crescent Avenue in Plymouth. $800,000. Money my husband and I had been saving all our lives, limiting ourselves to little things. Howard was a high school chemistry teacher. I was an accountant for a construction company. We weren't rich, but we knew how to save. No vacations abroad, no expensive jewelry, no fancy clothes. Only the essentials, only the simplest things. But now I have a 2-story Victorian house with an attic and a garden. The house I dreamed of since I was a little girl when my parents and I lived in a cramped apartment overlooking the brick wall of the building next door. Every morning I wake up early, around 6. Old habits don't die. I go down to the kitchen, make tea in a porcelain teapot that a colleague gave me for my 50th birthday, and sit by the window overlooking the garden. Even in winter, when the trees stand bare and gloomy, I find a special beauty in it. This morning, I watched the first rays of sunlight touch the hoarfrost on the apple tree branches. My phone rings and my daughter's name pops up on the screen. I take my time answering it. Our conversations have been strained lately. Mom, are you okay? What took you so long to pick up the phone? Olivia's voice sounds annoyed, like I'm making trouble for her on purpose. Good morning, sweetheart. I was just admiring the garden, I said calmly. At your age, you can't ignore a phone call. I might have thought something serious had happened. Her concern always sounds like a rebuke. At your age is a phrase she utters with special pleasure. At my age, I shouldn't be driving a car. At my age, I shouldn't live alone. At my age, it's stupid to buy such a big house. Noel and I will stop by this afternoon, she continues, not waiting for my response. We have something important to discuss. What's that? I grip the cup a little tighter. When we meet, Mom, not everything can be discussed over the phone. She disconnects, and I remain seated, staring at the faded screen. Olivia had always been a difficult child. Even as an infant, she screamed louder than other children, demanding more attention, more care. My pediatrician said she just had a strong personality. But as the years went by, that temper only grew more complex. By the time Olivia turned 14, Howard and I couldn't get along. Everything we did was wrong. Everything we said was stupid. We worked too hard, made too little money, were too boring, too old-fashioned. I remember one day she came home from school in tears. Her classmates were making fun of her clothes, bought at a cheap store. That night I pulled out my stash of money I had set aside for a new washing machine and took her to the mall. We bought her some fancy jeans and a sweater. She was happy all evening, hugging me and thanking me. But the very next day she was back to her usual discontent. Later she went to college, met Noel, got married. Now she's 46, has a successful career in pharmaceuticals. She's not poor, but she's always complaining about financial difficulties, about expensive mortgages, about rising prices. And every time she talks about my house, her eyes light up with a special sparkle. I get up, wash my cup, and start preparing for their arrival. I dust the bookshelves, vacuum the living room rug, change the flowers in the vase on the table. I don't need their approval, but I don't want to hear comments about how I'm already failing at housework. At exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the doorbell rings. It's Olivia and Noel stand on the doorstep with strained smiles. My daughter is tall, slender, with dark blonde hair in a tight bun. Noel is a dense man with a budding bald spot and small, attentive eyes. Mom, Olivia kisses my cheek. She smells like expensive perfume and some kind of chemistry, like she's just come out of a lab. How are you? I'm fine, darling. Beatrice, Noel nods at me, but makes no attempt to hug or kiss me. He's never been particularly warm. I escort them into the living room. Olivia immediately starts looking around, as if searching for changes since their last visit a week ago. Did you clean the windows yourself? She asks, pursing her lips. We talked about this. You shouldn't be climbing a stepladder at your age. I hired a boy from next door. He's in high school and works part-time on weekends. That's a lie. But I'm too tired of her lecturing me. I actually cleaned the windows myself while standing on a stepladder and did a great job. Hmm. She clearly doesn't believe me, but decides not to insist. Mom, Noel and I wanted to talk to you about the future. I offer them tea, but they refuse. What future? I ask, sitting down in my favorite chair. Olivia and Noel exchange glances. My brother-in-law pulls some papers out of his briefcase. You see, Mom, this house, it's too big for you. There are so many stairs, so many rooms to take care of. We're worried that one day you won't be able to handle it. I'm doing fine now, I answer calmly. Right now, yes, but what about a year from now? 2 years from now? Olivia makes it sound like I've already got one foot in the grave. We found a beautiful apartment in a new senior complex. There's a nurse, communal dining room, lots of people your age, my age. I can't hold back a bitter chuckle. You mean dying old people who need constant supervision? Mom, don't be dramatic, it's just a smart decision. Noelle spreads out brochures on the coffee table with pictures of the complex. Small studio apartments with minimal furnishings, a communal living room with plastic chairs, a tiny garden the size of my current toilet. What's going to happen to this house? I ask bluntly. They exchange glances again. Well, it could be sold, Noel says. Real estate prices are good right now. We'll help you invest the proceeds to secure your future. My future? I stare at them point blank. Or yours? Olivia sighs with feigned patience. Mom, we're thinking about you. You're 78 years old. You can't live here alone. But I do, and I'm doing just fine. You're doing fine, Noel says. But there's a risk of falls, injuries. At your age, a broken hip could mean, at my age, I repeat, feeling the anger building inside me. You make it sound like I'm not a person anymore, but a statistic. We're just taking care of you. Olivia takes my hand. Her fingers are cold and dry. Think about it, okay? You don't have to decide right now. They stand up, clearly satisfied that they've planted a seed of doubt. Olivia starts walking around the living room, looking at the furniture, the paintings on the walls, the books on the shelves. This chandelier is so old-fashioned, she remarks, looking at the crystal chandelier I bought at an antique store. And these curtains. They collect so much dust. Noel, meanwhile, goes up to the second floor without my invitation. I can hear him walking through the rooms, opening doors, muttering something to himself. What's he doing? I ask Olivia. Just looking around the house, she shrugs as if there's nothing strange about it. By the way, Mom, we brought you a new couch. This one's really beat up and it's hard for you to get up from it. A new couch? I can't believe what I'm hearing. But I didn't ask for it. Don't thank me, she smiles. Noel has arranged a delivery for next week. They'll pick up the old one and bring the new one. We chose the electric model. You'll be more comfortable. I look at my couch. Old, yes, but comfortable and full of memories. Howard and I bought it 30 years ago. It's where we sat in the evenings, reading books and discussing the day before. It's where I held my newborn Olivia in my arms. It was where Howard lay in his last days, when he couldn't come up to the bedroom anymore. I don't want a new couch, I say firmly. But Mom, this one's completely… I said I don't want a new couch, I say louder. This is my house, and I get to decide what furniture goes in it. Olivia looks surprised. She's not used to me objecting. Okay, she says after a pause. Whatever you say. But think about moving, okay? It'll really be better for you. Noel comes down the stairs holding my photo album. Found it in the attic, he explains. So many old photos. We could scan them and store them digitally. They'd be better preserved that way. Put the album back, please, I say, trying to remain calm. In the attic. He looks at me with slight surprise, but complies. As he goes back up to the attic, Olivia leans over to me. Mom, you're acting weird today. Maybe you need to see a doctor. I need you to respect my boundaries, I reply. And my home. We just want to help, she sighs. Okay, we should get going. Next time, we'll bring more information about that compound. And maybe we'll take you on a tour. They leave as quickly as they came, leaving me in the living room with the brochures spread out on the table. I pick them up and throw them in the trash. Then I sit down on my old, beat-up couch and, for the first time all day, allow myself to really think. What are they up to? Why do they want my house? Olivia's always been a materialist, but she used to at least try to hide it. Now she and Noelle aren't even trying to disguise their intentions. I get up and go into the kitchen, making myself some more tea. It's starting to get dark outside the window. The lights are on in the neighboring house. A family with small children. I often see them playing in the garden. A normal, loving family. The kind I've always dreamed of. The phone rings again. This time it's Willa, an old friend from high school. We haven't seen each other much in recent years, but we keep in touch. B, how are you? Her voice always sounds young, even though she's the same age as me. I'm fine, I said, not going into details. You don't sound very convincing. What's wrong? I sigh. Willa always sees right through me. Olivia and Noelle were here today. They brought the nursing home brochures and insinuated that it was time for me to sell the house. Those kids, Willa clucks her tongue. You're not even dead yet, and they're already dividing up the inheritance. Willa! Why? It's true. You bought the house with your own money, the money you and Howard saved your whole life. And now she wants you to give it up? They say they're worried about my safety. Bullshit. Willa was never shy with her words. If they were really worried, they'd offer to move in with you to help, or hire a caregiver, or install a panic button. But selling the house? No, honey. This is about money. I know she's right. But to admit it out loud is to admit that my only daughter only sees me as a potential inheritance. What do I do, Willa? Stand your ground. This is your home, your money, your life. Don't let them push you around. We talk some more, discussing her grandchildren, the latest episode of the show we're both watching. When I hang up the phone, I feel a little lighter. I turn on the light in the living room and sit down at the desk. I pull out an old notebook with phone numbers and addresses. I flip through the pages until I find the number of Henry Patterson, Howard's longtime friend and attorney. Maybe it's time to consult him about the will and other legal matters. I'm not ready to call him yet. For now, I'm just pondering, watching the last rays of sunlight leave my garden. The very garden I planned myself, where every plant was planted with my hands. Do I really have to give it all up and move into a tiny apartment in a complex for people my age? Number. This is my house. It's mine, and I'm not going to leave it. 3 days after Olivia and Noel's visit, I woke up to a strange noise downstairs. The clock on the bedside table read 7 a.m., too early for guests. I threw on a robe and walked carefully down the stairs, holding onto the banister. 2 men in work clothes were standing in the hallway, and Olivia was standing next to them, giving instructions. Between them was a light beige sofa with a power seat, just like the picture in the catalog she'd shown me last time. What's going on? I asked, standing on the last step. Olivia turned around, a flicker of guilt on her face that quickly changed to her usual determination. Good morning, Mom. We brought you a new couch, remember? The one with the power recliner. I told you I didn't want a new couch. But Mom, I already paid for it, and the delivery. Besides, the old one's all worn out. She signaled the movers to keep working. Wait, I raised my voice, which rarely happened to me. I didn't give permission to change the furniture in my house. The movers froze, looking from me to Olivia. My daughter looked annoyed and embarrassed at the same time. Mom, don't make a scene in front of people, she hissed. Please, let's discuss this later. There's nothing to discuss. I don't want that couch. Please, I said to the movers, take it away. But we have an order for delivery and assembly, said one of the men, scratching the back of his head. And for the removal of the old sofa, added the second. Cancelled. I crossed my arms over my chest, feeling my heart pounding with excitement. Olivia will pay you for your trouble. My daughter looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe before I would have backed off, agreed not to upset her. But something in me had changed since I bought this house. Something that wouldn't let me bend to her will anymore. Okay, she finally squeezed out. Leave the couch in the truck. I'll deal with it later. The movers were relieved to get back to their van. Olivia followed me into the kitchen where I was already making coffee, trying to keep my hands from shaking. What's gotten into you? She asked, leaning against the door jamb. I wanted to give you a present. A gift is something one wants to receive. I set the cup down in front of her. I made it clear I didn't want a new couch. But the old one's completely... It's my couch, Olivia. My home. My decisions. She took a sip of coffee, studying me over the cup. You've been different lately. Different, she said. Maybe you should see a doctor. Get your head checked out? There's nothing wrong with my head. I sat down across from her. I'm just tired of you making decisions for me. I'm taking care of you? No, you control me. There's a difference. Olivia set the cup on the table with such force that the coffee spilled out onto the tablecloth. You know what? I'm not going to argue with you. You're obviously not in the mood. I'll come back later when you've calmed down. She left, slamming the front door. I was left sitting in the kitchen, staring at the coffee stain on the white tablecloth. Before, I would have rushed to clean it up immediately, worrying about what Olivia would think when she saw the dirty tablecloth. Now I didn't care. That same day, toward evening, I got a call from Willa. Guess who came to see me? She asked me without preamble. Olivia? I knew who she was talking about. Bingo. She was crying about how you'd refused the gift she'd bought you and how you were acting weird. She asked me if I'd noticed any signs of dementia. I laughed involuntarily. And what did you say? That the only person in your family with signs of mental illness is her, if she thinks she can run your house. Willa chuckled. Don't worry, I was being polite. Said you were perfectly fine, just finally learning to assert your boundaries. Thank you. I was genuinely grateful for my friend's support. You're welcome. I've been telling you for a long time that your daughter is a peculiar one. And that hubby of hers is no better. We talked some more and I felt better. Willa always had a way of cheering me up. The next day, Olivia stopped by again, this time with a big box in her hands. I decided not to argue with you about the couch, she said, walking into the house. But you're going to need this. In the box was the latest smart thermostat with voice control and the ability to adjust the temperature through an app on your phone. You can control the heat from the comfort of your chair, Olivia explained. And Noel and I can check through the app to see if you're okay. If the temperature drops too low or rises too high, we'll know something's wrong. I looked at the box with suspicion. You mean you'll be monitoring me through the thermostat? Not watching, but caring, she rolled her eyes. You know how worried I get when I can't reach you. I decided not to make another scene and accepted the gift, but I didn't open the box. After Olivia left, I put it away in the closet, where it joined the other useful things my daughter and son-in-law had given me. An electric can opener that worked worse than a manual can opener. A set of anti-slip mats that slid on the floor by themselves. An automatic pill dispenser with an alarm clock that I turned off after the third day of use. Over the next week, I noticed small changes in the house after each of Olivia's visits. She rearranged the books on the shelves, rearranged the dishes in the cabinets, rehung the pictures. It's more comfortable, she'd say. It's safer. It's more modern. One day I discovered that all my pictures of me and Howard had disappeared from the living room. I put them away in an album, Olivia explained when I asked. It's not good for you to see reminders of Dad all the time. You have to move on. Put them back, I demanded. But Mom, now. She complied, but as if she were doing a favor for a crazy old woman. At that moment, I realized that for her, I was no longer a person with my own desires and feelings. I am a problem to be solved, a burden that needs to be put somewhere. Saturday morning, Olivia called and said she and Noel were stopping by for lunch. I made a roast from Howard's mother's recipe, the one dish my daughter always praised. I set the dining room table, got the good dishes. Despite our differences, I still hoped for a peaceful dinner. They arrived at noon, and it was immediately clear they had something other than a family dinner on their minds. Noel was dressed in a strict suit, which was unusual for a day off, and Olivia had brought a file folder with her. Before we sit down at the table, she said, we'd like to show you something. The folder contained pictures and a description of the apartment in the active retirement community, the name of the complex they'd offered me last time. We've made an appointment for a viewing next Wednesday, Noel said. It's got great facilities, a spa, a swimming pool, a library, a communal lounge for playing cards and chess, and a compact kitchen, Olivia added, pointing to a picture of a tiny kitchenette with minimal appliances. You won't have to cook on the big stove, but you can use the microwave. I silently flipped through the glossy pages of the brochure. All the pictures were of smiling seniors playing board games, doing light exercises, sitting in chairs with books. None of them looked real. All of them looked like they had come from advertising posters. How much does an apartment in this, uh, boarding house? I finally asked. Olivia and Noel exchanged glances. About 300,000, Olivia said. Plus a monthly maintenance fee. How much is that? $2,000, Noel answered. But that includes utilities, cleaning once a week, and access to all the infrastructure. I did a quick calculation in my mind. The sale of my house for 800,000 minus 300,000 for the apartment in the boarding house equaled 500,000, plus my pension and savings. Not a bad sum, which was clearly of interest to my daughter and son-in-law. And what do you propose to do with the rest of the money from the sale of the house? I looked directly at Olivia. Like I said, Noel interjected, we'll help you invest it. I have a financial advisor I know, who, of course, works on commission, I pointed out. Beatrice, you realize that no one works for free, Noel looked hurt. But I can guarantee he's an honest man. How can you guarantee that? He's my cousin, he smiled, as if that was supposed to reassure me. I put the brochure aside and stood up from the table. Let's have lunch. The roast will get cold. Over lunch, we talked about neutral topics. Olivia's work, Noel's new project, the weather, which was unusually warm for this time of year. No one mentioned the boarding house, the sale of the house, or the investment. But I could feel them watching me, assessing my every move, every word. After lunch, I offered them coffee. Olivia stayed in the dining room, and I went to the kitchen to prepare the drink. As I passed the study, I heard Noel's voice. Obviously, he was on the phone. Yeah, we showed her the brochure. No, she hasn't said yes yet, but I think we can convince her. Of course, we'll take over the apartment, and she'll get a life tenancy. What? No, she won't read the fine print in the contract. I froze at the door, not believing my ears. They were planning to take over the apartment? To give me life tenancy? As if I was no longer a person, but an object to be added to somewhere? The most important thing is to sell the house while prices are high, Noel continued. If she falls and breaks a hip or something, we'll have to hire a nurse, and then all the money will be spent on that. Yeah, I understand the risks, but Olivia's an only child, so it's all ours anyway. I stepped away from the door, nausea rising in my throat. My worst suspicions were confirmed. They didn't care about my well-being. They wanted the money from the sale of the house. On stiff legs, I went back to the kitchen and mechanically made coffee. My hands were shaking so badly that I almost dropped the cups. Taking a deep breath, I forced myself to calm down. I couldn't let them know I'd heard everything. Not yet. When I returned to the dining room with the tray, Noel was already sitting next to Olivia, both of them smiling at me with feigned warmth. Coffee's ready, I said, trying to keep my voice normal. Thanks, Mom. Olivia took the cup. We've been thinking, maybe we should start getting the house ready to sell now. Do some minor renovations, freshen up the decor. It might help us get a better price. I set my cup down on the table with such force that the coffee spilled onto the tablecloth for the second time this week. I'm not going to sell the house, I said firmly. But Mom, we didn't discuss anything. You offered, I said no. End of story. Olivia looked at Noel for support. Beatrice, he began in that reasonable tone of voice that always got on my nerves. Think about the future. What if you get worse? Who's going to take care of you? Olivia and I work full-time. We don't have the ability to— I'm not asking you to take care of me, I interrupted him. I'm doing fine on my own. And if I need help, I'll hire a caregiver. With what money? Olivia blurted out, and she bit her tongue when she realized what she'd said. The very money you want so badly, I said calmly. The money from the sale of the house, if it comes to that. But as long as I'm healthy and sane, I'll live here. They looked at me in disbelief as if they didn't recognize me. What's been going on with you lately? Olivia asked. You've never talked like that before. Maybe I should have started earlier. The rest of the visit passed in tense silence. They finished their coffee quickly and started to go home, citing some urgent business. At the door, Olivia turned to me. Mom, we really want what's best for you. Please think about our offer. I nodded, not promising anything concrete. When they left, I locked the door, sank into the chair, and finally let myself cry. Tears streamed down my cheeks, dripping onto my hands, onto my lap. I wasn't crying from grief, but from anger and frustration. My own daughter, my only child, whom I loved more than life, saw in me only a hindrance, an obstacle to my inheritance. After I calmed down, I decided to call Willa. I needed someone to talk to, someone to talk to. You won't believe what I found out today, I said as soon as she answered the phone. I told her all about Noel's conversation that I'd overheard. Willa listened in silence, occasionally clucking her tongue. I always said that Noel was a slippery one, she said finally. And Olivia, I'm sorry, Bee, but your daughter's always been too mercenary. Even in school, she was only friends with kids who had expensive toys or powerful parents. I know, I sighed. I just didn't want to admit it. What are you going to do now? I don't know. Should I talk to a lawyer? Rewrite the will? That's a great idea, Willa said. Especially if you leave everything to charity. That would be a kick. I smiled at the look on Olivia's face when she heard about it. I'll think about it, I said. But first I had to figure out how to deal with them. Should I pretend I hadn't heard? Or do I say it to their faces? If you say it now, they'll just change their tactics, Willa reasoned. They'll be more cunning, more careful. It's best not to show that you know their true intentions just yet. But be on your guard. We talked some more, and I felt better. Willa always had a way of looking at a situation soberly, without too much emotion. After the conversation, I sat in the living room for a long time, looking at the pictures of Howard that Olivia had tried to put away. What would he say now? How would he act if he were me? Howard had always been a gentleman who avoided conflict. But when it came to matters of principle, he knew how to be firm. Don't let anyone decide for you how to live your life, he used to say, even if that someone is our daughter. I wiped away the last of my tears and straightened up in my chair. No more feeling sorry for myself. It was time to take action. I would call Henry Patterson tomorrow and set up a meeting. It's time to protect myself and my home from my own daughter's encroachment. In the back of my mind, I still hoped it was a misunderstanding, that I'd misunderstood Noel's words, that Olivia was really concerned about my well-being, not my inheritance. But the other part of me, the more rational part, knew the truth. And that truth was bitter. The evening after my conversation with Willa, I called Henry Patterson. His secretary made an appointment for me in 3 days. In that time, I gathered all the deeds to the house, bank statements, insurance policies, anything I might need for counseling. The meeting with Henry went better than I expected. He listened carefully to my story without interrupting or judging. When I finished, he said, Beatrice, I've known you and Howard for over 30 years. You've always been reasonable people, and if you feel your daughter is trying to manipulate you, I'm inclined to believe you. We discussed various options to protect my interests. Henry suggested rewriting the will, setting up a trust that would manage my assets in the event of incapacity. That would prevent Olivia from gaining control of your assets, even if she tried to have you declared incompetent by a court, he explained. Besides, we put the power of attorney for medical decisions in Willa's name, not Olivia's. Now, if anything happens to me, Willa will be the one to make decisions about my treatment. Finally, I changed my will. I left some of the money to Olivia. She is my daughter, after all. But I've left the house and most of my savings to a charity that helps older people maintain their independence. Are you sure that's what you want to do? Henry asked me as I was signing the papers. Absolutely. When all the formalities were taken care of, I felt strangely relieved. It was as if the weight I'd been carrying for years was finally gone. The next day, Olivia called. Mom, Noel and I want to invite you to dinner on Saturday, she said in an unusually soft voice. We have some good news. I'd rather you came to my place, I replied. I'll cook dinner. But Mom, you know how hard it is for you to cook for everyone. I'll manage, I said firmly. Would 7 o'clock be okay? After a pause, Olivia reluctantly agreed. I knew she didn't like my insistence, but it was important to me that the meeting take place on my property, my house, where I'm the boss. Saturday, I got up early and started cooking. I decided to make Howard's favorite dish, roast lamb with rosemary and garlic, potato gratin, fresh vegetable salad. For dessert, apple cinnamon pie. The cooking took almost the whole day, but the result was worth it. The kitchen was filled with aromas that reminded me of happy family dinners when Olivia was little and Howard was alive and well. At 7 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. I took off my apron, fixed my hair, and went to open it. Olivia and Noelle stood on the threshold with strained smiles. My daughter held a bottle of wine, and Noelle held a folder of papers. Apparently, the good news had to do with the papers in that folder. "Mom, you look beautiful," Olivia kissed my cheek. "And what a delicious smell." "Lamb with rosemary," I accepted the wine. "Come on in, it's almost ready." We went into the dining room where I had already set the table. White tablecloths, the finest china, silverware I'd inherited from my grandmother, crystal wine glasses. I did everything I could to make dinner look special. "Wow, Mom, you did a great job." Olivia looked around the table with undisguised surprise. "Was it a special occasion? Does it take a special occasion to set a beautiful table for a family?" I smiled as I pulled the lamb out of the oven. At dinner, we talked about neutral topics: the weather, neighbors, a new movie that had recently come out. Olivia talked about her job, Noel about a project he was working on. I noticed them exchanging glances from time to time, as if they were waiting for the right moment to do something. When I brought dessert and coffee, Noel finally opened his folder. "Beatrice, we have some really good news," he began, pulling out some papers. "Do you remember that retirement center for active retirees we talked about? Well, we managed to book an apartment for you." "Booked?" I raised my eyebrows. "Without my consent?" "Mom, it's just a reservation, not a final purchase," Olivia explained hastily. "But there's a waiting list so long that if you don't book now, you could wait years." "How much did the reservation cost?" I asked, pouring coffee into cups. $10,000, Noel answered. "But don't worry, we paid from our own money. It's our gift to you." I put the coffee pot on the table and looked at them. "Very generous of you, but I already told you I'm not going to move anywhere." "Mom, be reasonable," Olivia said, a hint of irritation in her voice. "This house is too big for you. You can't take care of it. The garden is already neglected. The basement is moldy. The roof needs repair." "I hired a gardener last week," I interrupted her. "And a roofing crew is coming on Monday. As for the mold, there's no mold." I checked the basement with a specialist. Olivia looked surprised. "You hired a gardener? A roofer? Without consulting us? Why would I consult with you?" I sipped my coffee. "It's my house." "But Mom, these expenses, I can afford them." Noel cleared his throat. "Beatrice, we've done a little analysis of your finances." He pulled another sheet out of the folder. "With your pension and savings and the rising costs of home maintenance and medical needs, you could be broke in 3 to 4 years. Have you analyzed my finances?" I slowly set my cup on the saucer. "And how did you do that, let me ask you?" They exchanged glances again. "We have access to your bank statements," Noel admitted reluctantly. "Olivia is a trustee at your bank." "That was a long time ago, back when Dad was sick," Olivia added hastily. "Just in case something happened to you two." I felt the blood rush to my face with anger. They'd been watching my spending all this time? Checking how much I spend and what I spend it on? Examining my accounts without my knowledge? "I'll go to the bank tomorrow and cancel all the powers of attorney," I said, trying to speak calmly. "Mom, don't be ridiculous," Olivia rolled her eyes. "We're doing this for your own good. Someone has to look after your finances." "I can handle my own finances," I raised my voice. "I've been an accountant for 35 years. I know how to count money very well. But at your age, don't you dare start that sentence." I slammed my palm on the table, making the cups bounce. "I'm tired of this at your age thing. Yes, I'm 78. But I'm not out of my mind. I haven't fallen into childhood. I haven't lost my ability to make decisions." Noel looked shocked by my outburst, but quickly pulled himself together. "Beatrice, we understand how you feel. But the truth is that you are no longer the mistress of this house. You can't manage it physically or financially. It's too much responsibility for an elderly person." "What did you say?" I couldn't believe my ears. "I said you're no longer the mistress of this house," Noel repeated confidently. "It was time to face the truth. You need our help with the finances and real estate. Olivia and I are ready to take on that responsibility. You can live here for a while longer until we get the sale ready, but all major decisions now have to be made by us." I stared at them, not believing my ears. They weren't just wanting me to move in. They were actually announcing that they were taking my house. My house that I bought with my own money, that I paid for in cash with no loans or mortgages. Repeat what you just said, I said, feeling the rage building up inside. Noel, obviously not realizing how angry I was, continued smugly. Olivia and I are taking over your assets. We're going to sell this house, buy you a condo and a boarding house, and invest the rest of the money through my cousin. Simple as that. And what makes you think you have the right to do that? My voice sounded surprisingly calm, although inside everything was boiling. Because we're your family, Olivia answered, as if that explained everything. We care about you. We don't want you wasting your inheritance on this ridiculous house. My inheritance? I laughed bitterly. Is that what this is about? You're afraid I'll spend money you think should go to you? Mom, don't twist things around, Olivia grimaced. We just want you to live comfortably and safely, and we want your savings to be safe. For you, I finished for her. Well, after all, I'm your only daughter, she shrugged. Who else would you leave your possessions to? I got up from the table. You know, Olivia, I've been thinking about this for a long time. I've decided that I'm going to leave most of my estate to a charity that helps seniors maintain their independence. You'll get a certain amount, but not the house, and not the bulk of my savings. Olivia paled. What? You can't do that. I can, I smiled. And I already have. I changed my will this week. But that's not fair. She jumped to her feet. I am your daughter, your flesh and blood. Flesh and blood who just declared that I'm no longer the mistress of my own house. I shook my head. You know, Olivia, for years I'd turned a blind eye to your mercantilism. I put it down to youth, to ambition, to the influence of the modern world. But now I see that it's what you are. And it breaks my heart. Noel stood next to Olivia. Beatrice, you don't know what you're doing. It's a clear sign of cognitive impairment. The will could easily be challenged on the grounds that you're incapacitated. Try it, I grinned. Henry Patterson had made sure everything was legally flawless. I took a cognitive test, the results of which are notarized. I have a videotape of the will signing, and 3 witnesses, including 2 independent doctors. Olivia slumped back in her chair as if her legs had collapsed. Mom, you can't be serious. After everything we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me? I crossed my arms over my chest. Tried to get me to sell the house, watching my expenses without my knowledge, bringing me unnecessary gifts I didn't ask for, rearranging my things, put away pictures of your father. We took care of you, Olivia screamed. We came every week. We called. We helped. You came to see if I was old enough to take my house. I shook my head. You called to make sure I was still alive and your inheritance was safe. You were helping by forcing your decisions on me and ignoring my wishes. Noel put his hand on Olivia's shoulder. Come on, dear. Obviously, your mother is in no condition to discuss these matters intelligently. I'm in perfect condition, Noel. I looked him straight in the eye. And I want you both out of my house, right now. What? Olivia stared at me in disbelief. I want you to leave, I repeated. And don't come back until you learn to respect my boundaries and my decisions. Mom, you can't kick us out. We're your family. Family doesn't try to take a house away from an 80-year-old woman. I headed to the front door and opened it. Please leave. Olivia and Noel looked at me as if they couldn't believe I was actually kicking them out. Then Noel silently gathered up his papers, took Olivia under his arm, and led her toward the exit. Olivia stopped at the door. You're going to regret this, Mom. When you fall and break your hip, or forget to turn off the gas, or can't climb the stairs, then you'll remember this day and regret it. Maybe, I nodded. But it will be my decision and my consequences, not yours. They walked out and I closed the door behind them. Then I went back to the dining room, where the half-eaten dessert and coffee were cooling on the table. My hands were shaking and my heart was pounding, but there was a strange lightness inside. It was as if I'd shed a heavy weight I'd been carrying for years. I started clearing the table, putting the dishes away and throwing away the leftovers. When everything was washed and put away, I poured myself a glass of wine that Olivia had brought and went out onto the back porch. The night was warm and quiet. The stars were shining in the sky, as bright as the night Howard and I had first met at the dance in the city park. He came up to me, smiling shyly, and asked if he could ask me to dance. I said yes, and a month later we were engaged. Howard was a good man. Kind, honest, hardworking. He didn't deserve a daughter like Olivia, and I probably made some mistakes in her upbringing too. Maybe I gave her too much, or too little, or not giving her what she needed. But it's too late to think about that now. I had to live my life now, the life I had left. And I wasn't going to spend it trying to live up to the expectations of a daughter who only saw me as a purse. I finished my wine and went back inside. For the first time in years, I felt truly in charge of my home, my decisions, my life. Before I went to bed, I called Willa. "How was dinner?" she asked when she heard my voice. "I kicked them out," I said simply. "What?" Willa couldn't hide her surprise. "Tell me." I recounted the entire dinner conversation, not leaving out any details. When I got to the part where Noel said I was no longer the lady of the house, Willa launched into a tirade of profanity that made me laugh. "You were right to kick them out," she concluded when she had calmed down. "I should have put them in their place a long time ago." "I'm afraid they won't back down," I admitted, "especially now that they've found out about the will." "They won't," Willa agreed. "But at least now they know you're not a helpless old woman to be manipulated. That's something." After talking to Willa, I showered, changed into my pajamas, and went to bed. My bedroom was on the second floor with windows overlooking the garden. I like to fall asleep to the rustling of leaves and the singing of night birds. Today, despite all the turmoil, I felt strangely peaceful. It was as if the heaviness I'd been carrying for years was finally gone. I knew that Olivia and Noel wouldn't give up trying to get my house. I knew there were more challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of the future. I was ready to fight for my home, for my independence, for my life, and that willingness filled me with a strength I hadn't felt since Howard was gone. The phone rang, waking me up at 7 in the morning. Olivia's name popped up on the screen. I watched the phone vibrate on the bedside table, but I didn't rush to answer it. Last night was still in front of me, the shock on my daughter's face when I'd asked her and Noel to leave. Her last words at the door, full of veiled threats. The phone went silent, but a minute later it rang again. And again. And again. After the fifth ring, I turned it off and went down to the kitchen. Outside the window, a new day was beginning. The sun was just rising above the horizon, coloring the sky a soft pink. I made tea, made toast with jam, and sat by the window, looking out at the garden. The feeling of peace I'd experienced last night was still present, but there was an uneasiness to it. What would happen next? How would Olivia react to my decision? Would she somehow try to circumvent the law and gain control of my finances? I was pondering this when I heard a knock on the door, insistent, loud. I knew it was Olivia, so I took my time opening it. The knock repeated, and then I heard her voice. "Mom, I know you're home. Open the door." I finished my tea, put the cup in the sink, and walked slowly into the hallway. When I looked out the window next to the door, I saw Olivia alone, without Noel. She looked worried and annoyed at the same time. "Mom, please, we need to talk." She spotted me through the window. "I was worried when you didn't answer the phone." I opened the door but didn't invite her in, Olivia. "I asked you not to come over until you learned to respect my boundaries." "For God's sake, Mom, stop with the boundaries crap." She tried to squeeze past me into the house, but I stood firm in the doorway. "We are a family. We can't have boundaries." "Is that why you thought you could take over my house?" I shook my head. "No, Olivia. I'm not ready to talk to you right now. Please leave." "I'm not going anywhere until we talk." I started to close the door. "Then we'll have to call the police." "You wouldn't dare!" Her eyes widened in shock. "Shall we check?" I pulled my cell phone out of my pocket and started dialing. Olivia stepped back. Okay, I'm out of here. But this isn't over, Mom. We'll talk about this again." I closed the door and leaned my back against it, feeling my heart pounding in my chest. Never before had I threatened to call the police on my own daughter. But then again, never before had she tried to take my house away from me. Over the next few days, Olivia called me constantly. I didn't answer. She left messages, first angry, then pleading, then angry again. I listened to them, but didn't call back. The fourth day after our dinner, Willa called me. "B, are you okay? Olivia calls me every day asking if anything's wrong." "I'm fine," I sighed. "I just don't want to talk to her yet." "She says she's worried about you. She's worried about her inheritance." I couldn't help the bitterness in my voice. I couldn't agree more. Willa said quietly. But she called your sister Eleanor too. My heart dropped. Eleanor and I had never been particularly close. She lived out of state and we saw each other every few years. But she always felt entitled to give me advice and direction. And what did Olivia say to her? That you were out of your mind and kicked her out of the house for no reason, Willa snorted. I talked to Eleanor this morning. She's all freaked out and she's going to come over and deal with the situation. Great. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache coming on. This was all I needed. Don't worry. I explained to her what was really going on. She seemed to understand. But she still wants to come and see you. Let her come. I shrugged, even though Willa couldn't see it. I had nothing to hide. After talking to Willa, I decided to call Henry Patterson. I needed to make sure all my paperwork was in order in case Olivia did try to contest the will or have me declared incompetent. Everything is in order, Beatrice, Henry assured me after I explained the situation. We've done everything legally perfect. Olivia has no grounds to contest the will or your legal capacity. But if she insists, we can file for harassment and attempted fraud. This calmed me down a little, but the anxiety didn't disappear completely. In the evening of the same day, there was another knock on the door. This time it wasn't Olivia, but an older man in a suit. Mrs. Whitmore? He bowed politely. My name is Edward Prescott. I represent social services for the elderly. We received an anonymous call about possible abuse or neglect. I stared at him, not believing my ears. Abuse? Me? Who would say something like that? The call was anonymous, he repeated. But we were told that you might be in need of help, refusing medical care and showing signs of cognitive impairment. That's a total lie. I straightened up, crossing my arms over my chest. I'm perfectly fine, both physically and mentally, and I can prove it. I'm not here to accuse anyone, Mrs. Whitmore. He held up his hands in a conciliatory gesture. Just checking the facts. May I come in for a moment? I reluctantly invited him in. Mr. Prescott looked around, asked me a few questions about my daily routine, my health, my financial situation. I answered calmly and clearly, though inside I was seething with anger. I knew who had made the anonymous call. Well, Mrs. Whitmore, he finally said, I don't see any signs of abuse or neglect. Your home is in excellent condition. You are adequate and thinking clearly. I'm sorry I had to bother you. Don't apologize, Mr. Prescott. You're just doing your job. I walked him to the door. But maybe you should pay attention to the people who make these calls. Sometimes there are other motives behind the concern. He nodded understandingly and left. I closed the door and leaned against it, feeling my legs shake. Olivia was out of line. Calling social services with a false accusation wasn't just pressure anymore. It was an attempt to take away my freedom and independence. I called Henry and told him about Mr. Prescott's visit. This is serious, Beatrice. I could hear the concern in his voice. If Olivia is prepared to take such measures, she can go further. I suggest we file a harassment report right now. Against your own daughter? I sighed. I can't, Henry. I can't. Then at least document the incident. Write a formal letter to Social Security stating that you're concerned about an attempt to use their service to pressure you. I'll help you draft it. I agreed, and the next day Henry and I sent the letter. It was the first step in officially defending myself against Olivia's manipulations. That same night, I got a call from Noel. I didn't want to answer, but I figured I'd better find out what he had to say. Beatrice, he began without preamble. You're making a big mistake turning Olivia against you. She just wants to help. By calling social services with a false accusation? I couldn't contain my sarcasm. Very helping behavior. She was worried. You didn't answer your phone for days. What was she supposed to do? Maybe respect my desire to be alone? I suggested. Or realize that sometimes people need space and time to think about a situation? Noel sighed. Look, Beatrice, we all overreacted at that dinner, said things we didn't mean. Let's just forget it all and start over, okay? What exactly did you not mean, Noel? I asked you straight out. That I'm no longer the lady of my house? Or that you and Olivia should be in control of my finances? Or maybe the plans to put the boarding house apartment in your name and give me only lifetime residency? There was a long pause. How did you? He began, but cut himself short. Never mind. Look, we can discuss all the details. Find a compromise that we can all agree on. A compromise between what and what, Noel? Between you wanting to take my house and me wanting to keep it? I'm afraid there's no room for compromise. You're making this so complicated. There's irritation in his voice. We just want to make sure you're safe and secure for your old age. No, you want to make sure you get my property, and as soon as possible. Noel sighed again. Olivia was right. You're impossible to talk to rationally. You take everything in stride. Because you're trying to take away my home and my independence. I felt my blood pressure rising. How am I supposed to take this? You know what? Forget it. Noel was clearly losing his patience. We wanted to settle this peacefully, but I guess we're going to have to do things differently. Is that a threat? I straightened up, even though he couldn't see it. It's a statement of fact. He paused. Olivia is your next of kin. If something were to happen to you, she'd be the one making the decisions about your treatment and care. Think about that. He hung up, leaving me shocked at his words. It wasn't just a threat. It was an open statement that they could use my health care against me. I immediately called Henry and told him about my conversation with Noel. It's a good thing we've already put the power of attorney for medical decisions in Willa's name, he said. It takes away their biggest bargaining chip. But still be careful, Beatrice. If they're willing to go that far, I understood his concern. I shared it, but I wasn't about to give up or compromise what would really be a surrender. The next few days passed relatively quietly. Olivia didn't visit again, though she kept calling. I still didn't answer her calls, but I turned on my answering machine so I could hear what she was saying. Her messages varied in tone from angry, "How can you do this to me?" to pleading, "Mom, please talk to me, I'm worried," and back to threatening, "If you keep this up, we're going to have to take action." I listened to them, but I didn't call them back. Instead, I decided to do something I'd been wanting to do for a long time, but had been putting it off: enroll in an art class. Even in my youth, I loved to draw. I even had a little talent. At least that's what the teachers at school said. But then came adulthood with its cares and responsibilities, and drawing took a back seat. I always told myself that I would return to it when I had more time. And now that time has finally come. The local community center had classes for adults on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I called there and signed up for the nearest class. The woman on the other end of the line sounded friendly and said they always welcome new participants, especially in my age group. "We have a lot of students over 70, she said. Some are starting to paint for the first time in their lives. Others are returning to a long-time hobby. You'll love it, I promise." On the day of the first class, I was as nervous as a teenager on a first date. What to wear? What to bring with me? Would I look silly among the other students? In the end, I chose simple pants, a comfortable blouse, and a cardigan. I took my bag with the pencils and drawing pad I had bought the day before at the art store. Before going out, I looked at myself in the mirror. An ordinary old woman with gray hair, gathered in a neat bundle, with wrinkles around her eyes and mouth. Nothing special. But inside, I felt strangely young and excited. The class was in a bright classroom with large windows. The group consisted of 12 people of varying ages, from a 30-year-old woman with colorful tattoos to a man who looked older than me. The instructor, a thin, middle-aged woman with short gray hair, introduced herself as Heather. "Today we're going to start with the basics," she said after a brief introduction. "Lines and shapes, nothing complicated, just to get a feel for the pencil in your hand and the paper underneath." She gave us the simple task of drawing geometric shapes with different types of lines. I diligently drew circles, squares, triangles, at first tentatively, then more and more boldly. "You have a good eye," Heather said as she passed my desk. "Have you ever drawn before?" "A long time ago in high school," I smiled embarrassedly. "More than 60 years ago." "My hand remembers," she nodded. "Go on." By the end of the 2-hour class, I was feeling a strange mixture of fatigue and excitement. My drawings were far from perfect, but Heather said they were pretty good for a first time. As I was packing my things, an older woman with short gray hair and lively eyes approached me. "Hi, I'm Martha." She held out her hand. "You're new, aren't you?" "Beatrice." I shook her hand. "Yes, today is my first class." I've been going for 3 months now, Martha smiled. Would you like to have tea with me? There's a nice cafe across the street. I hesitated. I wasn't usually one for spontaneous introductions, but there was something about Martha's open smile that made me feel at ease. I'd love to, I finally said. In the cafe, we talked about painting, about life, about our families. Martha was a widow like me, with 2 grown sons who lived in other cities. They call every week, send me presents for the holidays, she said. But we rarely see each other. They have their own lives, their own families. Aren't you lonely? I asked. Sometimes, she shrugged. But I have friends, hobbies, volunteer work at the library. I've learned to appreciate the freedom that comes with being alone. Her words made me think. I always thought loneliness was a curse, especially after Howard died. But maybe it had its advantages. The freedom to control my time, my space, my life without having to adjust to someone else. As we were saying goodbye, Martha suggested we meet before the next class. I usually arrive half an hour in advance. I like to be prepared, she said. We could have coffee together before class. I agreed, feeling strangely excited. Perhaps I had just made a new friend. At my age, that was an unexpected and welcome bonus. When I got home, I found another message from Olivia on my answering machine. This time, she sounded more subdued. Mom, please call me back. I want to apologize for everything that happened. Noel and I overreacted. Let's just talk, okay? I listened to her voice, trying to figure out if she was sincere. Part of me wanted to believe that my daughter had truly realized her mistake and was remorseful. The other part, the more cynical part, suspected it was just a new tactic. If anger and threats didn't work, maybe apologies and reconciliation would work. I decided not to call back just yet, but not to delete the message either. Time would tell if her apology was sincere. That evening, I pulled out my drawings and laid them out on the table. Simple lines, basic shapes, nothing special. But to me, they symbolized something more. The first step toward a new life, a new hobby, new acquaintances. I thought of Martha's words about the freedom that comes with being alone. Maybe she's right. Maybe this new phase of my life, without Howard, with a strained relationship with my daughter, has its advantages. The opportunity to do what I want to do, not what others expect me to do. Since Howard's death, it's been as if I've been living in suspense, suspended between the past and the future. Buying a house was the first decisive step into a new reality. And now, with these art classes, with new acquaintance, with realizing my rights and boundaries, I was taking the next steps. And it was liberating. Scary, yes. Lonely sometimes. But liberating too. I put the drawings on the mantelpiece and stared at them for a long time. Then I picked up the phone and dialed Henry Patterson's number. Henry, I said when he answered, I'd like to make some changes in the will, not to the distribution of the estate, but to the cover letter. What kind of changes, Beatrice? He asked. I want to explain why I've made this decision. I want Olivia to understand that this is not about revenge or resentment. It's that I want my property to benefit those who really need it. That's a good idea, Henry agreed. When do you want to do it? As soon as possible. Maybe tomorrow? We made an appointment for the next day. After talking to Henry, I felt strangely calm. It was like the last piece of the puzzle was falling into place. I didn't want to punish Olivia by disinheriting her. I wanted my money and my house to serve a good cause. And now I had a chance to explain that if not directly to my daughter, who wouldn't listen, then at least in a letter she would read after my death. It had been 4 months since that memorable dinner when I'd kicked Olivia and Noel out of my house. Autumn changed to winter and then spring. My garden was starting to wake up. The first crocuses and daffodils had already broken through the ground and the apple trees were ready to bloom. I often sat on the veranda with a cup of tea, watching this rebirth and feeling a strange kinship with nature. We had both survived the cold winter and were now coming back to life. Painting courses became an important part of my week. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I went to the community center with a folder of drawings and a set of pencils. Heather said I had a talent, especially for landscapes. I wasn't sure if that was true or just a polite compliment, but I loved drawing. The process required complete concentration and left no room for anxious thoughts. Martha became my good friend. We met not only at classes, but also on other days. We went to the movies, to small cafes. Sometimes we just walked in the park. She introduced me to the other members of her hobby circle, a group of older people who met once a week to discuss books they had read or just talk about life. You know what I've noticed, B? Martha said to me one day as we sat in her small but cozy apartment. You've changed since we met. You've become more open, confident. Have I? I was surprised. I hadn't noticed. It happens a lot, she smiled. We don't see our own changes, but they are there. When you first came to class, you were like a taut string, tense, ready to defend yourself at any moment. Now you're relaxed, more natural. I thought about what she said. Maybe she was right. 4 months without Olivia's constant pressure, without having to justify every decision, without feeling guilty that I wasn't living up to my daughter's expectations, it had really changed me. Olivia called several times in the first few weeks after our fight, but I never answered. Then the call stopped. Willa, who was still in contact with her, told me that my daughter was furious at first, then depressed, and now seems to have come to terms with the situation. She says you're acting like a stubborn old woman, Willa informed me during one of our weekly phone conversations. But she's no longer trying to save you from yourself. This should have reassured me, but instead brought on a strange sense of loss. Despite our differences, Olivia was still my only daughter, my flesh and blood. Had our relationship really ended like this, not by talking, not by reconciliation, but simply by silence and mutual estrangement? One spring day when I returned from my art class, Olivia was sitting on my porch. She looked tired and a little thin. She was holding a bouquet of wildflowers, simple and humble, not at all like the expensive bouquets she usually bought. Mom? She stood up when she saw me. I know you don't want to see me, but please listen to me for at least 5 minutes. I stared at her, trying to understand my feelings. Anger, resentment, sadness. A little bit of everything, but none of it was predominant. Okay. I opened the door and invited her inside. We went into the kitchen. I put the kettle on, got the cups out. Olivia was sitting at the table, nervously rubbing the flower petals. How are you? She finally asked. Good, I shrugged. How are you? Not great, to be honest, she smiled weakly. Work stress, the usual. I've also missed you a lot, Mom. I poured the tea and sat down across from her. Why did you come, Olivia? To apologize. She took a deep breath. What Noel and I did, what we said at that dinner, it was wrong. We were out of line. And I understand why you were so angry. I drank my tea in silence, waiting for him to continue. I've been thinking about it a lot, she continued, about how you and I have talked over the years, and I realized that I'd often been obsessive, controlling. I really wanted what was best, but I wasn't doing it right. Her words sounded sincere, but something in her gaze, in the way she avoided looking me in the eye, made me doubt it. What else do you want to say, Olivia? I asked bluntly. She was quiet for a moment, then blurted it out. Is it true that you rewrote your will? That you're leaving the house to a charity? That was it. The real reason for her visit. Yes, that's true, I nodded. I left most of my estate to a foundation that helps the elderly maintain their independence. I left you a certain amount of money, but not the house. Her face changed. The mask of remorse was gone, giving way to anger and resentment. How could you? Her voice trembled. I'm your only daughter, your family. Family doesn't try to take a house away from a mother. I sipped my tea calmly. The family doesn't monitor her bank accounts without her knowledge. The family doesn't call social services with false accusations. It wasn't me. It was Noel. She looked away. I didn't know he would call social services. But you knew about his plans to put the boarding house apartment in your name and only give me lifetime residence. I looked her straight in the eye. Didn't you? Where did you? She paused. It was for your own safety, to protect you from crooks. From crooks like you and Noel? I grinned bitterly. Olivia jumped up. How can you say that? We cared about you. We wanted you to be safe. You wanted my house. I remained calm. And my money. Everything else was just pretty words to cover up the truth. It's not true. She pounded her fist on the table. Yes, I believe I'm entitled to an inheritance. I am your daughter. But I never wanted you to get hurt. You didn't want me to get hurt? I shook my head. What do you think would have happened to me in that cheap boarding house, with a room the size of a closet? And I'd be totally dependent on your visits? Do you really think I'd be happy without my home, my independence, my dignity? Olivia opened her mouth to object, but couldn't find the words. Look, I sighed, feeling suddenly tired. I don't hold a grudge against you. I understand that you see things your way, but I'm not changing my mind. The house will go to charity. That's my final word. So that's the way it's gonna be? Her voice has grown cold. You're going to throw me out of your life and your will for some strangers? I'm not throwing you out of my life, I shook my head. You will always be my daughter, and you'll get your share of the inheritance. But the house? The house has to do more than just enrich you and Noel. Olivia looked at me with such anger and resentment that it physically hurt. But I couldn't give in, not that. Then we have nothing more to talk about. She stood up from the table. Goodbye, Mom. I hope you'll be happy with your new friends and independent life. She headed for the exit. I followed her. Olivia, don't leave like that. We can find a way. A way to what? She turned around abruptly. You've made it clear that my feelings and my rights mean nothing to you. You've chosen your path. Now live with it. She walked out, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. I stood in the hallway, feeling tears come to my throat, but I didn't let them flow. Instead, I went back to the kitchen, finished my tea, and started cooking dinner as if nothing had happened. But inside, something had changed. I finally realized that my relationship with Olivia would never be the same. Too much had been said, too much had been done. The bridge that connected us had collapsed, and I saw no way to rebuild it. In the evening, as the sun began to set, I went out into the garden with a cup of tea and sat on a bench under an apple tree. The spring air was fresh and clean, full of the promise of new life. I inhaled deeply, savoring the moment of peace. A phone call broke the silence. I checked. It was Martha. "B, are you okay?" she asked when she heard my voice. I tried to sound cheerful, but I guess I didn't sound very convincing. "What's wrong?" Martha could always sense my mood, even over the phone. I told her about Olivia's visit, about our conversation, about her angry departure. "I'm sorry, B." Martha sounded genuinely sympathetic. "But, sometimes it's better to have an honest breakup than a false intimacy." "Maybe you're right," I sighed. "It's just strange to realize that your own child, whom you've raised with such love, could become a stranger." "People change," Martha said philosophically. "Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. You can't control who your child will become. You can only decide how to react to what he or she has become." We talked some more, and I felt better. Martha offered to come over the next day, but I declined. I needed time to be alone, to process what had happened. After talking to Martha, I continued to sit in the garden, watching the last rays of the sun color the clouds pink and gold. The birds sang their evening songs as they prepared for sleep. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. I thought about my life of childhood in a cramped apartment overlooking a brick wall, a youth full of hopes and dreams. Meeting Howard, our wedding, Olivia's birth, years of working as an accountant, evenings checking numbers by the light of a desk lamp, Howard's illness and death, buying this house, my first real home. Life is full of ups and downs, joys and sorrows. I couldn't change the past or control the future, but I could live in the present, fully, honestly, without masks or pretense. I took out of my pocket the drawing pad and pencil I'd always carried with me since I'd started taking classes. I sketched the outline of the garden, the apple tree, the bench, the path leading to the house. Nothing fancy, just a quick sketch. But there was something deeply satisfying in this simple act. To create rather than destroy. To build rather than break. When it got too dark to draw, I went back inside. The new message indicator on the answering machine was flashing. I pressed the play button, expecting to hear Olivia's voice, maybe with new accusations or conversely an apology, but it was Henry Patterson. "Beatrice, I've received the paperwork from social services. They investigated the anonymous call and concluded that the allegations were unfounded. Furthermore, they determined that the call was made with the clear intent to cause harm. They're prepared to press charges against the caller if that's what you want. Call me back, please." I sat back in my chair thinking about what I'd heard. Press charges against Noel? Start a lawsuit that would surely be long, unpleasant, and public. No, that's not what I wanted. I called Henry back and told him I wouldn't press charges. Are you sure? He asked. It's a serious violation of the law. I'm sure. I didn't hesitate. I don't want to spend the rest of my life in courts and scandals. I want to live in peace with myself and with the world around me. Henry didn't argue, though I sensed that he didn't fully agree with my decision. After talking to him, I went up to my bedroom, took a shower, and went to bed with the book Martha had given me. A novel about an old woman who, at 70, decided to take a trip around the world. Reading about the heroine's adventures, I involuntarily compared her to myself. She was braver, more determined, more adventurous. But in some ways, we were alike. Both of us found the strength at a late age to start something new, to go against the expectations of others, to choose our own path. I closed the book and turned off the light. The stars twinkled outside the window, the same ones my parents had seen, my grandparents, all the generations before them, and the same ones that future generations would see when I was gone. That thought was comforting for some reason. My life is just a tiny dot in the endless stream of time, but it's my dot, my life, and I have the right to live it as I see fit. With this thought, I closed my eyes and fell into a deep, peaceful sleep, without disturbing dreams. In the morning, I woke up with the first rays of the sun. I got dressed, went down to the kitchen, made some tea, then went out onto the veranda with a cup in my hands. The garden was beautiful in the morning light. Dewdrops glistened on the grass and flower petals. Birds fussed in the branches of the apple trees, busy with their avian tasks. I sat on a bench, warming my hands on a cup of hot tea. The day promised to be clear and warm. A good day for plein air painting, like Heather had suggested. Thinking about Olivia still hurt, but not as much. Maybe someday we'd find a way to rebuild our relationship. Maybe we wouldn't. Either way, I couldn't let this pain define my life. I finished my tea and went back into the house. I got out the easel I'd bought a while ago, canvas, paints. Today I would try to paint my garden, not with a pencil, but with paints, with all its spring colors and shades of green. Life went on, without masks or pretense, sometimes bitter, but always honest. And this honesty had its own special beauty.